but we have the CJNG, which is the Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generacion, and those guys are the nightmare guys. I think one of the things is that narco culture gets glamorized, and they don't understand the violence level of these guys. They're very violent, they're very vile, and they are very organized. The scouts are from Mexico all the way up to just outside of Metro Phoenix area, right? So you could be 75 miles inland from the US-Mexico border, and you will have a guy on a hilltop working for the cartel, living there for weeks on end, and he's letting the bosses know this area is clear or it's not clear, or we have this problem or that problem. We couldn't prove that he specifically flipped because of that, but he was a bad guy, or turned into one.
Yeah. So Ponch and John.
That was it, man. That was it, dude. We were cruising.
There's going to be a big portion of the audience who has no fucking idea what I'm talking
right?
about,
I know,
which makes us the old guys.
Ponch? Who's Ponch?
What the fuck? Do you know why why that was his pet project? Why he wanted motorcycle cars?
Yeah, so he ran at the time that he was running, we had photo radar. And he was a big opponent of photo radar. Mm-hmm. And so he said, I'm going to get rid of photo radar as a sheriff, and I'm going to put guys on motorcycles because I want butts in seats and I want actual human contacts on these stops and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. How long were you a bike cop for?
I only did that for just about a year and a half, I think. And it's crazy because my mom's always been kind of like, seriously, why'd you have to do this, right?
Of all the things.
Yeah, you want to be a cop, okay. And then I got on SWAT, and she's like, really, you got to be a SWAT guy? When I got on motors, Mom was really not happy with that because she knows, it's just a matter of time.
Did you grow up riding? Because I know that course is incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
So you'd never ridden before that, or not?
I had ridden here and there on friends' bikes, but I was not a motocross guy. I didn't really have my own bike or anything at that point, and so didn't have a lot of experience, which actually one of my instructors told me like that probably helped. You didn't have bad habits that we had to fix.
It's like teaching people to shoot that have never shot before is better than somebody with a bunch of bad habits.
Right.
Wow. That's still impressive, though. I mean, that's not an easy...
No, it was a tough course, but the tough thing about it, it's mentally tough, and people don't understand that because like the motorcycle riders out there that ride fast and straight, that's not hard.
Yeah.
Riding slow, methodical, and maneuvering is the tough work, and that's where they get you. And that's what happens is you get in your own head.
Yeah. Looking down.
Yeah, exactly.
Looking down.
Head and eyes.
Yep. Man, that's fascinating. All right, so after the bike project, then what?
So from motors, I get promoted to lieutenant. So I test for and get promoted to lieutenant, and that was at the end of 2010. And so yeah, I'd been on motors for about 2 years.
Actually, before you get into that, any good motor stories of chasing anybody or anything crazy?
Well, nothing too crazy. I think the craziest stuff from motors was you realize when you're on a two-wheeled bike that every little mistake counts more. And so there was a couple of times where I almost cost myself a wreck. One of the times was, and it's crazy how you go back to your training, I was doing an enforcement stuff. So I'm sitting there running radar. I get a guy on radar, so I put my stuff away, and I'm going to take off after him. And we were on Honda ST 1300s, and they have a lot of torque. And so as I started my turn, I gunned it to get out after him and get in traffic quickly so I don't get smashed. And when I did that, I popped a wheelie. And so I'm in a turn on a wheelie on this big-ass Honda.
900-pound motorcycle.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, holy shit, because I'm like, well, fuck, I'm done. I'm going to dump it to the side, right? And so I remember my instructor telling me, keep the wheel straight. That they pounded that into us. Like, if you pop a wheelie, keep the wheel straight, keep the wheel straight, keep the wheel straight. So that flashed in my head immediately. So I'm up in the air on a wheelie, halfway leaning over, and I'm like, fuck the wheel, keep the wheel straight, keep the wheel straight. And when I hit, it came back down, and when it did that, it actually snapped me back up, and I was off and running again. But that was definitely an oh shit moment that I remember the rest of my life.
Do you guys, because in Phoenix and Arizona in general, it's a pretty big sport bike area, just because there's a ton of really good roads for it, you know, both for straightaways and twisties and whatever. Yep. Did you ever get into chasing bikes, or as a bike cop, do you not really mess with it?
No, the only like real motorcycle chase stuff we ever did was the Hells Angels do an annual run, and we got in a few chases with them, but nothing too crazy. And we wouldn't chase like the sports bikes. Some of those guys are just phenomenal riders, and it's way too dangerous for both of us to try and chase them. You just
let them go.
Yeah.
I've seen some videos like on, I think they're carryovers from TikTok, which I'm not on personally, but I think on YouTube where, and I don't know where these cops are at, but it'll have like, you know, because with the cameras, the Insta 360s and GoPros and whatever, like there's phenomenal footage of these dudes doing some of what they do with these, you know, sticks and whatever.
Yep.
But like they'll pull up next to a cop and they're like they get the go ahead from him. Like the cops will look around and then they'll be like, give him almost like the flight deck, you know. It's like, and then the fucking dude just pins it and the fucking takes off and whatever. I'm like, where are these cops at? That like, I mean, I would think, you know, that getting posted, they could figure out who it is, and those dudes are getting some deep shit for doing that.
Well, and the problem being, because, you know, I'm like the next guy, I want to have fun and see dudes have fun, but the problem would be, obviously, if they wreck, now you're liable for that, and they're going to come back. So, that's
your fault.
I wouldn't be.
Do you ride now at all?
No, it kind of ruined me, man. I had a personal bike, and so during that same time period, I had gotten a personal bike, and after I got off, you know, riding for work, I was just like, I'm good, man.
Yeah. What was your personal bike?
It was a Yamaha V-Star that I had bought off a buddy, and it was a cruiser. Like one of the big things was I almost dumped it a couple times because my work bike was anti-lock, all the souped up stuff. My home bike wasn't, and I would find myself riding it like I rode my work bike, but it didn't perform the same, so pretty dangerous.
Yeah, those nannies will save your ass for sure. All right, so you leave the motorcycle unit. I interrupted you. I just was curious if you had any good bike stories. But so moving forward.
So I get promoted at the end of 2010. I promote to lieutenant, and they put me over the SWAT team at that point. So then that was the point that they created a full-time commander position for the team. And so I moved from team leader to team commander to command of the team, and was our SWAT team commander. I also had narcs in our anti-smuggling unit, and I had our regular detectives for a while. I kind of bounced around in the beginning. I had property persons crimes, and then I went back to smuggling narcs. And so ultimately, smuggling, narcs, and SWAT was my path forward as a lieutenant.
Yeah, and that's kind of all of your time kind of all converging into where the book kind of comes in from the storytelling standpoint of all the things that you've done since 2010, 2011.
Right, and so that was, the book itself contains mostly those 9, 10, 11, 12. That's the kind of the era of those operations.
Yeah, okay.
What are the two key components for canine success? That's effective training and proper nutrition. Fueled by Team Dog brings those two components to your family and best friend. The perfect nutritional balance that results in a higher mental acuity, energy, overall vitality, and even an improved appearance. Every product you will find in my company's store was born from the battlefield and not from the boardroom. Let my life's work help you become your dog's hero.
All right, so going into kind of where the book comes to a head in the years, kind of outlining fighting trafficking and cartels, I'd love to get kind of the 30,000-foot view as it relates to the book, and then dig into some of the details of it specifically.
Yeah, so when I decided to write the book, you know, I knew I wanted to tell some of the stories of some of the stuff we had done out. So our county's kind of unique. So if you look at Phoenix and Tucson, our county is right in between those two. So if you travel from one to the other, you go right through our county. I-8, the Interstate 8, starts in our county and ends in San Diego. So that's one of the interstates that cuts east-west, and then I-10 runs through our county. So two major routes to get to the Phoenix hub, which is, generally speaking, as they smuggle humans and drugs, they're smuggling from the Mexico border up and they get into Phoenix and then redistributed, right? So our county becomes an integral part of that whole smuggling system. And the southwest portion of our county is about 50 to 60 miles off of the actual international border, but that entire 60-ish miles is wide open desert with minimal population and a lot of Indian reservation. And actually, Indian reservation that crosses over the international boundary. So that particular tribe has land on both sides. And, and the cartel uses that to their advantage as well.
So I'm assuming they can go back and forth as they want,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, they can cross over. So the cartel will marry into them and, exploit that whole system. Wow. But wide open spaces, and so a lot of open desert routes that come up. And again, as we were working this problem, we knew we were working a unique problem, but you didn't really understand the magnitude and caliber of it and where it was going to go in the future. But we're working the problem. We're doing these operations, and we're kind of learning as we go, because a lot of it was really military style maneuvers, right? We're doing like ranger patrols out in the desert. We're having to sneak in at night under night vision, and we're having to counter. They would have listening devices like the amplifiers up on the hills to hear if people were creeping in vehicles. We did a lot of vehicle-borne operations during these times, or the time in the book there that we're talking about. And so those interdiction operations is kind of what I went through, and I just picked out, several different operations that stuck out in my mind, talked to some of my guys on my different teams at that time, and, hey, you remember this? Oh, yeah. And they would, add to. A lot of times they'd be like, oh, yeah, and then remember this happened? Oh, shit, yeah, I forgot about that. So got the stories all lined out, and then I was like, I can't just go straight into stories. I've got to lay some foundation. So I started the book laying a little bit of foundation about me, because I was like, well, people are going to look at me and be like, this is a white guy. What does a white guy have any business talking about Mexicans and the Mexican culture? So I kind of line out my upbringing in a gang-infested area, all Mexican gangs, where I grew up and immersed in that culture. And then as I got older, kind of the same thing. We moved from the inner city out to a farming area, but kind of the same culture that I lived in. I'm married. My wife is Mexican. Her family's from the state of Chihuahua. And so lived that culture at home as well. And so I lay that all out, like, here's who I am and here's how I know what I know about the Mexican culture. Then I go into the structure of the cartels that we dealt with. Like, here's how they were structured. Then kind of here's how their belief system works, and even into some of their narco culture, as far as not only just their belief systems, but it's almost a pop culture down there, right? They have their own narco culture, and they have their own saints that they pray to, and some of the legitimate saints they've bastardized and turned them into narco saints. So I kind of line all of that stuff out, and then go into the operations themselves so that people have a good idea of what we're talking about.
So when you first started getting into this was 2009, 2010?
Yeah, it was 09, 10. Well, so when I was undercover the first time, which was 2000, the cartels were there. They just looked different and acted different. And I had a little bit of exposure then, but it was much different. And as we get into the 9-10 era, where I was, where we're talking about these operations, that's where I was really in it, and we were really countering the Mexican cartels.
Would you say, contrasting then to even now, is it vastly different, or is it pretty similar?
I think it's pretty similar. Like their operations, how they operate are pretty similar. They're just more adaptable now. Different commodities, and much higher violence and technology.
Yeah. What are some of the things that would surprise people? Obviously, just the term cartel and the cartel culture and a lot of intricacies of how they operate is pretty widespread. And there's a lot of documentaries on them. There's news coverage all the time. Is there anything that, from your perspective of kind of living at ground level with them for so many years, that people either get wrong or that they don't realize, or that it's a misconception?
Yeah, I think I think one of the things is that that narco culture gets glamorized, and they don't understand the violence level of these guys. They just, they think that it's this, kind of cool soprano kind of shit, right? And it's not. These guys, they skin their own people alive. They rape women. They burn people alive. They use horrible tactics to enforce their methodology. And so they're very violent. They're very vile. And they are very organized. And I think the organization is one thing, because sometimes it looks very rudimentary, but it's very effective. And I think one of the things that people are really surprised by the most, especially when we would have like news cameras come out, they would want to, hey, we want to see what goes on out there. The scouts. And I talk about the scouts in here. I talk about some scout interdictions in here. And what a scout is a dude up on a mountaintop that works for the cartel. And what people don't understand is the scouts are from Mexico all the way up to just outside of Metro Phoenix area, right? So you could be 75 miles inland from the U.S.-Mexico border, and you will have a guy on a hilltop working for the cartel, living there for weeks on end. He has solar packs up there with car batteries, charging radio systems. Their radio system is rolling encryption radios that are GPS monitored. So the bosses in Mexico know exactly where their radios are, who has them. Rolling encryption means it's very difficult for anybody to get on that channel and monitor that traffic. So they're very sophisticated in that sense. And that scout, his job is observe and report. So he's up there with that radio on the mountaintop, and he's letting the bosses know this area is clear or it's not clear, or we have this problem or that problem, kind of coordinating the movements. And that's one thing that surprises people quite often. They don't realize how infested it is with those types of activities.
Yeah. Wow. Do you have the intimate enough knowledge to outline or timeline, say, methamphetamines from where it's made all the way to the end user here? Like, could you outline that process? Do you know all those steps?
So really for me as a local, the feds have a much better, so if I have a 30,000 view, they've got a 60,000 foot view, right? And so when you're talking internationally and when you cross that international border, the feds have a much better perspective on what's going on in Mexico as it makes its way up. We were primarily, once it had crossed the line and into our area, that's where we became the experts of our area, and really that's all we focused on. And of course, being in the business, you understand that you have that, because I went through what meth started as to what it is today, meaning when I was a young deputy, the Hells Angels controlled meth on our side of the U.S. anyways. So the biker gangs controlled meth. It was all made in the U.S. It was made using older methods, much less pure, much more rudimentary, and how they made it much more volatile when they're making it, meaning you could have explosions and burn and all that stuff. And then we saw that transition, and that power was taken down to Mexico, and Mexico started their super labs, right? And they're getting fed chemicals directly from the Chinese to make those super lab methamphetamine quantities that are just pumping that stuff up.
Would you say in that shift from biker gangs to Mexico, did that cause a rift, or was it more of a working together, like, hey, okay, you guys can make more, a better product, you can make more of it, we'll now move it for you? Like, are they working together or are they battling?
No, I would say they work together, but honestly, I don't think the cartels asked permission. I think they just took it.
Right.
And I think that as you watched it happen, I don't think anybody who loses control of a market is not going to be happy about that. But what was happening is the quality of meth that was being made locally by bikers compared to the quality of meth that the Mexicans were importing, much higher quality, much more pure. So it just naturally killed their market, and they couldn't do anything about it. So I think they realized, well, are we going to keep spinning our wheels here, or just jump in partnership with this? And because obviously the cartels are going to get it into the U.S., And then if they have networks already set up, i.e. gangs, that becomes their distributorship.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess, cutting out the first half of the equation of how it gets from its inception to the border, once it comes across the border, can you speak to kind of the actions on getting it across and where you guys come in and trying to battle it, as well as kind of the cartels that you're dealing with and what that whole organization piece looks like?
Yeah, for sure. So even in some sense on the south side of the border, like where they're making it, we know just, from being in the game, again, that the Chinese are importing or the Mexicans are importing from the Chinese the chemicals, right? And then they have these super labs where they're making just a shit ton of meth, and then they transport it up to the border. And so what happens is you have big bulk loads that are coming up towards the border, and then typically, and this would be meth, this would be fentanyl, it was even weed back in the day when weed was still a big thing with the Sinaloans. Those bulk shipments would make their way up to the border inside Mexico, and then they would sit in warehouses, and you would get small distributions sent out accordingly. So, and it was really almost like an Amazon, right? So you have dope sitting in these big warehouses on the Mexico side, and based on the orders they're receiving on the U.S. side, some gets shipped. So, okay, we're going to ship you 10 pounds here, we're going to ship 50 pounds there. So that's kind of how it goes. And when it gets into the U.S., they will walk it in. They will drone it over sometimes. So they'll drone drop. They have catapults that they've used. So they'll catapult it into a kind of a remote area, and they'll have pickup crews on the U.S. side that go grab it.
Like what, from a catapult standpoint, what kind of range?
They would usually launch them in a couple hundred yards. So they'd be on the south side of the line, and they'd catapult it in, and it'd go a few hundred yards in, and generally speaking into open fields and stuff. And then they have a pickup crew waiting because they got real good at knowing where LE was. They have the scouts out, right? So scouts are all watching. They call clear on the south side. They come up and they bring their catapults, or they drone over, or even we had oh my God, the lawnmowers that fly. What the hell are those? Ultralights. They would fly ultralights over with a load on it. Sometimes it was backpackers, so backpackers would just cross over the fence and they would walk it up.
What kind of load size are they droning and catapulting over?
Those are smaller loads, but you got to remember when you're talking like fentanyl powder, fentanyl pills, even meth, smaller cash loads still yields bigger profits than like marijuana, right?
So like a 5-pound load of meth is hundreds of thousands, or is it not?
No, not anymore. But back then, yeah. So it was smaller amounts were getting higher cash value, but now like a pound. I want to say, God, I'm going to get this wrong, but I want to say a pound is right around $10K, something
really?
like that. Yeah.
Damn, it's that cheap?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because they're mass producing.
Yeah, that's wild. All right, so the different elements of how they're getting it. Once the pickup crews, like where do you guys come in, and where are you kind of initially going head to head with cartels and the movement piece, and where are you guys coming into play?
So once it gets into the U.S., that's where we will come into play. That's where Border Patrol, a lot of our partnerships with Border Patrol, we specifically worked with like their BORTAC squads. We would be out there doing interdictions. So as soon as it gets to the U.S. side, that's where we come in and start. And you work it a lot like you do like undercover dope, right? You have sources of information that'll tell you like, hey, they're bringing a load here or there. We have some electronic surveillance that we use. Sometimes you're working big cases that have wires and stuff, and so you kind of know communications going on. Sometimes it was rudimentary in a sense that we would do basic interceptions of their communication. And this will blow people's mind, but when I say we would intercept their communications, we would grab a scout on a hill and get his radio, right? And so radio is on, he's using it. We snatch him up without him knowing we're there and grab his radio. Scouts' first orders were, typically speaking, they would have to turn the radio off, take the battery out, and throw the pieces separately so that we couldn't get in them. Because if you found the battery, if you found the main part of the radio and put it back together, you would turn it on and it would have a passcode that you had to enter. And if you didn't know the passcode, you couldn't get into it. Or if you entered it wrong too many times, it locked up. So getting an open radio was a big deal. And so if we could get an open radio, a lot of times you could hear their communication. But even if you could hear it now, they're speaking Spanish, obviously, and they have their own code system. So they would talk in code, so you would have to figure out their codes. But a lot of times you'd be able to break through a lot of that and intercept some of those loads coming up using that. So good old source intel, big case stuff where we're working wires, and then intercepts on their radios a lot of times is how we would work those loads.
What's the kind of the protocol for when you're interacting with these guys and you hear, kind of some of these stories about being threatened and kind of the brutality aspect, like what is your guys' method of trying to avoid getting wrapped up into that kind of stuff, or do you? I mean, are you having guys within the interdiction units that you're working with that are on kill lists or targeted by some of these cartel guys? Or
the weird thing is, and it's changing, but back then, like the older mafiosos from the Mexican cartels still had rules and still had somewhat of a code that they lived by. And so a lot of times U.S. law enforcement was off limits, right? Because that would bring a lot of heat, and they don't want heat. They know that us interdicting their loads, they know that that's such a small percentage that they factored into their business plan. And so, when we were most effective at ripping their loads, we were maybe getting 20%, maybe.
Oh, wow.
And
so it's like a churn rate factored into it.
Yeah.
Wow. So the short answer is no, or at least back then. Now it seems like the new crop is kind of less.
Well, now they're more confrontational and more defiant. And so I don't think they still don't openly come at us like that, because it will attract a lot of attention, and they're really running a business, even though it's a violent business. So for the most part, no, you don't find that stuff, but you do. So yeah, when you're running those types of crews, you do spot check your people, right? You're running financials. You may have to do polys or CVS, voice stress tests and stuff like that to keep everybody honest, because their motto is plata or plomo, which is silver or lead. And we've talked to people on the Mexican side that's exactly what has happened to them. They said, hey, we'll give you X amount of money to look the other way. And no, I'm not going to do that. Okay, well, here's pictures of your kids and your wife, and here's where they're at right now, and we're going to kill them unless you answer yes in 30 seconds. So that happens, but we haven't seen that exploited as much on the American side.
To your knowledge, have any of you guys within your all the different crews you've worked with ever flipped?
Yeah, we arrested, when I was the narc sergeant or lieutenant, we arrested one of our narcs that had we couldn't prove that he specifically flipped because of that, but he was a bad guy, or turned into one.
Yeah. Do you know, I mean, obviously it's going to vary, but is there kind of a range of how much a guy in one of your guys' positions is going to make by flipping?
Nah, I don't think there would be a range. It would totally be difficult because it would depend on what they're doing, how they're doing it, who they're working for, and a rat is a rat is a rat. And so that's the one weird thing too, is that the cartels, as violent as they are and as much of a criminal element as they are, they still have a code too. And so even a dirty cop is viewed as kind of a shithead, right? And a rat. So they really don't show them any respect, and they are not going to be big ballers or anything like that.
Yeah. You guys know I talk about sleep a lot and recovery. Magnesium is a big part of sleep, but it's not only sleep that being deficient in magnesium, can cause problems with. An estimated 75% of all adults in the United States are deficient in magnesium, and it's not just sleep. It can be digestion, it can be cognition, it can be energy, it can be recovery. Magnesium is a vital component to our body's process. And with that, I mean, a whole host of other issues can come from magnesium deficiency. It can be a root cause of anxiety, depression, insomnia, stress. All of those things combined are contributing factors to issues that a lot of people face. Ned has come out with the product Mellow, which is a magnesium product. It's a powerful daily super blend, and it contains 3 of the most bioavailable and nutrient-dense forms of chelated magnesium on Earth, 2 of the most stress-busting aminos, GABA and L-theanine, and over 70 trace minerals. Mellow is truly in a league of its own. It offers 300-plus benefits to help with better sleep and optimal health and wellness. It comes in 4 very delicious flavors. There's lemon, lavender berry, pomegranate, and naked, which is a stripped-down, flavor-free version that's great for adding to smoothies, coffee, shakes, etc. The folks at Ned have spent over 3 years developing their best-selling Mellow Magnesium Super Blend, and it's they've really gone to the ends of the earth to create one of the best magnesium products on the planet. Become the best version of yourself and get 15% off Ned products with code MicDrop, all caps, all one word. Go to helloned.com/MicDrop or enter code MicDrop at the checkout. That's helloned.com/MicDrop to get 15% off. These statements and products have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease or condition. As you guys know, dipping is a big tradition in the military. I used to dip. It's not particularly great for you. So that's why I like working with Black Buffalo. They've got edible green leaves, food-grade ingredients, no tobacco leaf or stem. There is nicotine in the product, or you can have non-nicotine parts of the product. They have long cut if you like the traditional route, or pouches if you'd rather go the mess-free way. But they've got wintergreen, mint, straight, peach, and blood orange. And what I love about this is that it keeps in tradition with that routine of wanting to pack a dip after a meal or on a road trip while you're hunting, hiking, what have you. The way a lot of us used to do, either in the military or first responders or just outdoorsmen. And you get to maintain that ritual that a lot of us really, really enjoy, and frankly is the reason why we dipped in the first place. In this case, you get the tobacco-free version. So, and again, if you want the little pick-me-up with the nicotine, you can get it. If you don't, then you can get it without. But it's everything that you love about dip, nothing that you don't. There's no compromise. Again, there's long cut and pouches, edible green leaves, food-grade ingredients with or without pharmaceutical-grade nicotine. They've got wintergreen, mint, straight, peach, and blood orange. Mint is my personal favorite. The pouches have won multiple awards from industry publications. It's one of Black Buffalo's best performing products. All products are proudly made in the USA exclusively for 21 and over adult consumers of nicotine or tobacco. Black Buffalo sells their products online and ships directly to your front door. Go to blackbuffalo.com, and for 20% off, use the code MicDrop. That's MIKEDROP, all caps, all one word. 20% off your first order at blackbuffalo.com.
Warning. This product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Black Buffalo products are intended for adults age 21 and older who are consumers of nicotine or tobacco.
Guys, as you know, I work with a number of different products. One that's easily the most near and dear to my heart from a cause standpoint and a personal relation standpoint is Bubs Naturals. The hat on the coffee table sitting right in front of me belonged to Glenn Doherty. It was a John Deere hat that I gave him. He had it when he tragically passed in Benghazi. And I was fortunate enough to get it back from one of the co-owners of Bubs. He sent it back to me to be able to keep. Bubs Naturals is a tribute to Glenn. He was one of everybody's, he was kind of that guy that was everybody's best friend. I met several people that considered him his best friend, and he was a guy that was impossible not to like, and just, caused happy waves that rippled through every community he was ever a part of. His nickname was Bub, and that's where Bubs Naturals comes from. But it's a lifestyle brand. It's inspired by Glenn. They give a ton to charity. They've donated over $200,000 to charitable causes since their inception in 2018. On Veterans Day, 100% of the proceeds go to the Glenn Doherty Memorial Foundation, which does phenomenal work helping active duty and children of lost active duty members go to college or scholarships that they've donated a ton, and they also are heavy into the recreation space of helping people do that, because that's what Bub was all about. They have collagen peptides, which I put into my morning routine every single morning, as well as the functional creamer / MCT oil that goes into it as well. They have hydrate or dielectric electrolyte drink mixes, which are great for pre-workout, during workout, and post-workout to get all the added sodium, potassium, magnesium, etc. that's required when you deplete it. And they now have Bub's Brew, which is a specialty organic coffee that is also very, very good. It's USDA organic, fair trade. It's Whole30 approved, which is the first time that's happened. It's free of yeast, mold, and aflatoxins. Small lot roasted, guaranteed fresh, and it tastes great. Biggest thing is Bub's is a family company. The way that they started is, again, super close to my heart, with him being one of my closest friends for a long time. And I just can't say enough good things about that company, of the product that they put out, why they started, what they give back to veteran communities and the Glenn Doherty Memorial Foundation. And I encourage you to go to bubs.com, and now there's a landing page specifically for Mic Drop listeners. Just enter the code Mike, M-I-K-E, all caps, and you get 20% off your first purchase at bubsnaturals.com. So that's www.bubsnaturals.com/Mike. And you can check out the Mic Drop landing page and go support an amazing cause. That's a rough, it just seems like a lose-lose. Like, why mess with it? All right. So in terms of some of the stuff from the book, can you share some of kind of the stories that made it into it, and or parts of it, to where people get an idea of what's in it?
Yeah, for sure. So again, kind of go through the first part is just going to be learning about me and learning about the culture and learning about some of the narco saints and the narco culture. And then as we get into the operations, there's a couple that I put in there that I thought were, I figured they would make for a good read, keep people's attention, and also give them information where they would be like, holy shit, we did not even know this was taking place in our backyard, right? And then some funny aspects, right? There's always those stories where you're like, holy shit, I can't believe that happened. And so one of the funny ones, I drove a root beer quad cab F-150 Ford, and had desert pinstripes all the way down it from running out in the brush and stuff. And during the time frame that we're talking about, they would run a lot of the same style vehicles, quad cabs, whether it were Fords, Chevys. They loved the Chevy Avalanches because it was a quad cab, and then it had that hard tonneau cover on the back. So a Chevy Avalanche, and this was when the Sinaloans were running heavy weed, a Chevy Avalanche could run about 1,800 pounds of weed in it. So that would be one load coming across, and they would run that thing hard. They loved those things. But there was one time where we ended up in a load came across. We were monitoring it. It gets to our area. We close in on it, and we try and stop the guys. And it's 2 Ford trucks, a red quad cab F-150 and a root beer brown F-150. And then I'm in a root beer brown F-150 chasing. And as I'm chasing behind them, we're going down a farm road. Well, the one guy slams on his brakes and kind of skids out and starts doing donuts. And he's just starting to try and dust us out. And so the red truck is still taking off. And the brown truck is taking off. The red truck is doing the donuts. And as he finishes his donuts, he starts heading the opposite direction that we just came from. And as he does that, because I kind of slow down because it's getting dusted out, so I can't see what's going on. And as I start to enter into the dust, here he comes out of the dust. And we go almost head on and kind of swerve a little bit so that we don't hit each other. And I distinctly remember the look on his face because I could tell what he was thinking. And it still makes me crack up to this day because you got to remember that the truck that was traveling with him full of dope was one of his buddies from Mexico that he just saw driving the brown F-150. And now he comes face to face with a brown F-150, and here's a white guy driving that truck.
Yeah.
And I could see the look on his face as we passed each other. He's kind of looking like, the fuck did that guy get our truck? And we turned around, and awesome. We ended up catching him down the road. He wrecked out, and we got him.
Wow. What's the biggest load that you've come across drug-wise?
I think when we were doing this stuff, weed, the biggest load was right at about 5,000 pounds. And then when you're talking meth, and during this time period, meth and heroin were kind of the thing. Meth, I think, was right around 200 pounds, and the heroin was right around the same, about 200 pounds of heroin.
Yeah. It's 200 pounds of heroin. I mean, what is that street value?
Oh, dude, I don't even know. I can't do that kind of crackhead math.
Yeah. Hundreds of thousands.
Oh,
or
yeah, millions, yeah.
Millions. Wow. What's kind of, if you could pinpoint maybe the craziest or hairiest story from your time when you were, kind of balls deep in it?
One of the, I mean, they all had their own sense of crazy, right? Because just crazy shit happens in each little one. But there was one rainy night, and I don't think I put this one in the book actually, but this will be a tidbit. I just remember this one. There was one rainy night where we were chasing them paralleling Interstate 8, and so we were on a little dirt road, and it was raining. And in Arizona, we have these things called flash floods. So it could be raining like 30 miles away, and the creek here is going to flood because that water's all running down right towards the Gulf of Mexico. So we're chasing them, and we would be lights out. So when we were in these chases, we were running under nods. So we would be lights out, the vehicle's blacked out, we're running under nods, and we're chasing them. So they're blacked out, we're hauling ass down a road about 60 miles an hour, dirt road.
So they're running on nods also?
No, they would not run nods. These bastards, I don't know how they did it, dude. They had the best natural night vision that I've ever seen in my life, because they would run those speeds with no night vision on, with just using their eyes. But they had been driving the whole night like that. And a lot of times, with the smuggler's moon, when you have a full moon out, you have so much ambient light that desert lights up. But we're chasing them nonetheless, and we're going along, and I remember, okay, we're coming up to a creek or a creek bed, and so I start to slow down, and as I do, I see they hit their brakes, and when they hit their brakes, they didn't have cutouts on the brake lights, so the brake lights light up. So I see the brake lights, and then I see the brake lights go up, and then I see them go down, and then I see them go airborne. And I'm like, oh shit, like that's not good, because now I'm coming up to that same spot. So we slam on our brakes, and what I did not see is that this guy at the very last minute saw that he was about to jump a creek bed that was bank to bank water, hauling ass, and a flash flood will take that truck right down the creek. And he ends up clearing it. He jumped the creek.
Fucking Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah, he made it to the other side, landed hard, and ends up wrecking out, actually, and getting stuck. But we can't get to him because we got, this is probably a 30-foot across creek bed that he just made it across. And he hit water on the other side, but he was able to power through it. And so we had to work our way around and eventually got to the truck. But it was shit like that. And there was times where on Interstate 8, I know there's still truck drivers out there. Maybe some of them will be listening, and they'll be like, oh, that was what that was. So what we would do is we would drift behind semis. So we would get on Interstate 8 blacked out, running under night vision, and we would get behind a semi and use them as our lights. And so they would be hauling ass down the freeway, and we'd be hauling ass behind them. They would give us sound cover, and the scouts, because there's scouts on the freeways too, they're calling out vehicles. So it would give us, we'd be able to hide behind the semis. And every once in a while, for whatever reason, we would pass the semi blacked out, and you could see them kind of, swerve as you pass by them. And I just imagine they're like, what the fuck was that?
What's that fucking moron?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There was a lot of those kind of stories going on.
Yeah. So kind of the meat of the book operationally was 10-ish years ago.
Yeah.
And then, so as you moved away from that, what did you get into?
So moving forward from that time frame, I remained in that position, and all the way through to 2014. In 2014, I got moved back to patrol as a patrol lieutenant for a short stint, because at that time we had a boss who was an idiot, and he thought, he told me, well, everybody needs to go do patrol time. And I'm like, I worked patrol, whole career, I'm good. But he said, no, you have to go back as a lieutenant. So they transferred me out for a short period of time to a patrol lieutenant. And then the programs we had in place, because the guy they put in my place wasn't as familiar with it, and a lot of the programs we had in place for our SWAT team started to falter. And so I think it was a year and a half later, they're like, hey, you're going back and you need to fix all this shit. Okay, so I went back to the team and was back in command of the team, and kept that until 2016. In 2016, our current sheriff ran for sheriff and won, and he got in touch with me and he said, hey, I want you to move up and be my second in command, be my XO. And I took him up on that offer because I knew at that point I had 24 years in, and I knew I was coming up on the end of my career, and I felt like it was a great spot to finish because operationally, I have operational control of the agency. And so the sheriff gives me his, here's my mission, my values, and kind of where I want to head, and then I execute. So it's a really good place for me to end my career. I've been able to have good influence, like especially on my team, because I knew the stuff that we needed that we would never get because of budget. Well, now I'm in control of the budget. So our team, I was like, Merry Christmas, motherfuckers, 'cause here we go.
So, I mean, you're kind of the guy then, really.
Yeah.
I mean, because the sheriff is more like a figurehead hood ornament that's, walking around. I mean, like, you're the guy doing all of it.
He's doing the political piece. So he's going to the political meetings. He's going to the neighborhood meetings. He does. Our sheriff is pretty active though. He's out on the street too. So he'll go out to calls and stuff. But he does all that with me in place to execute at the operation level.
So kind of a hand of the king position.
Yep.
A little bit.
Yep.
So with that, I mean, like, from your perspective, I mean, even coming and doing something like this, like if you're gone even just for the day,
Right.
Do you have to have somebody kind of in your place, or?
Yeah, I've got, so the way we're structured, I'm considered, or not considered, my title is Chief Deputy, so second in command is Chief Deputy, and then right under that is third and fourth in command, which are Deputy Chiefs. So I have Deputy Chiefs in place, so anytime, like right now, I'm out of state, so my Deputy Chief is running operations.
So he's nervous right now.
No, he's good to go, man.
He's
we
finally,
have,
fucking get out of here.
No, we. I would dare to say that we have one of the best leadership structures. We've invested heavy in our guys, and we let them do their jobs. And so, I want it to be like that. When I leave, that they don't miss me. They can.
That's good. How many active deputies are there within the entire county?
We have 250 sworn, 249 sworn, and then we have 167 uniformed staff in the jail, detention officers, and then with civilian staff and everything, we're right around maybe 650.
Oh, okay. So within the county, what's the population of?
Population of our county is only 500,000.
Really?
Yeah.
And so, on average, I mean, about how many sworn active deputies are out and about?
Like any given shift, you probably have, I don't know, 40, 50 out on the road.
Okay. So out of the 250, that breaks down 3 shifts a day.
And you have detectives, right? So there's detective division. We have canine division. We have an aviation unit. We have our motors. So there's all these specialty assignments. So when you add all those in, that number grows, right? And of course, it grows more depending on the shift. So day shift, a lot of detectives on, a lot of admin on, that kind of stuff. And so those numbers are bigger. And then as you go into like graveyards and stuff, those numbers shrink a little.
Yeah. How many canines you guys running?
We're running 6 total.
What's your position on them, I guess? Because one of the things that I've noticed in working with departments all over the country, there's it's almost like CrossFit gyms. It's like there's such a disparity on one end of the spectrum. You've got chiefs or sheriffs that are like, fucking use them, like, total gloves off, take them off leash, no pun, like to just fucking have at it. They love the dogs. They want their guys being aggressive with them. Yeah. On the other end of the spectrum, you got some that it's like, why do you even have dogs if you're going to hamstring your guys that bad? What's your position kind of?
I think our position, not just with canines, with everything, is let them do their job. So we have dual purpose dogs, so they run them dual purpose. So if they're out to do bite work, so if we have a fleeing felon, then get the dog on them, and we let our dog do their thing. We have some that are not dual purpose; they're dope only, and of course, that has its place.
Yeah.
But no, we don't restrict our guys. We, of course, there's case law. There's all kinds of stuff that the canines themselves have to follow, related to like using them for patrol work and bite work and that type of stuff. But within those parameters, we let them have at it.
Yeah, that's good. All right, so a couple, going back to some of the kind of operational stuff, tying it into what you're doing now, if you break down kind of as you look over your entire, would you call it a department?
Mm-hmm. Well, we call it an office. Yeah.
When you look over your entire office, can you give us a breakdown of the focus of what percentage-wise kind of gets focused on different things?
So it should be the case for any police agency. The patrol is your primary focus, right? And so that's your responding to calls for service and protecting your public, right? So that's the base of our operations is patrol services. So we're providing public safety to those areas that we police. And so that percentage is probably 60%, I'd guess, maybe 65 is patrol-based stuff. And then you have all the ancillary stuff like the detectives, right? So they're doing the follow-up or they're doing the bigger crimes, homicides. We have our drug detectives. We have our anti-smuggling squads. Those are all ancillary duties, and each one has a small percentage because they're all, smaller units.
Would you say that drug trafficking and human trafficking are the biggest problem areas in the Phoenix area?
Yeah. Like for us and even the Phoenix area, we have all the normal problems that any agency deals with, the domestic violences, the robberies, the burglaries. We have all that stuff going on. And the smuggling piece adds just a whole new layer to that. And it has its own set of crimes that come with it. And that's one of the things I think people need to understand is when you talk about, they'll say illegal immigration, right? And that evokes emotion. Because you're talking about immigrants that are mostly coming here for a better life, that type of stuff. That's what they lump into illegal immigration. But what it actually is now, it's not illegal immigration anymore. It is human smuggling controlled by the cartels, right? They're controlling all this movement. So that becomes problematic for us in the sense that, they're moving humans as a commodity. And I'll give you a story. I told you these girls know they're going to get raped. Our air unit went out with, they found a group, landed, encountered the group. There was a female in there. She had a bag of pills. They asked her, hey, what's in the bag? Well, these are morning after pills because, as a woman, we understand we're going to get raped 8 to 10 times on this journey. Jesus. I don't want to end up pregnant. So every time I get raped, I take a morning after pill. And she says that as a matter of fact, right? She's not emotional about it. She's just letting us know what happened. So, when you're talking about that type of stuff going on, right? So you have these evil bastards that are controlling this commodity of humans, smuggling them in, treating them like that, or allowing that type of treatment. They'll do it to their own people, so they don't care if you're white, black, Mexican. They don't care, right? You're a commodity, and if you're a male, you're probably going to face extortion. You're going to get some beatdowns. You're going to have to do what they tell you to do, haul drugs, even if you don't want to haul drugs. There's robberies, there's assaults, there's homicides. So you have the influx of all that stuff associated with the smuggling problem.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing that that a lot of people aren't aware of is the kind of auxiliary nefariousness that is attached or alongside all of that stuff.
Well, and I'll give you another piece to show you what savages these bastards are. They had these things, they still have them, but they're not as popular. They have what are called rape trees, and rape trees are where they rape women, and then they throw their undergarments up on the tree as decoration of their, the females they've conquered. So that's the type of stuff that they do.
So have you guys encountered those before?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've seen them in our county.
Panties all over.
Yep, they got panties and bras on them. Some of them are full of blood because they've raped the female so badly with their undergarments still on.
Man, and they just understand that's part of the deal. So
yep.
you have to ask yourself, or at least for me, that invokes questioning. Thinking about the willingness to say, okay, that's part of the deal. I'm still going to do that, even though I know that's going to happen.
Right.
That's such a horrible environment to imagine where you're willing to put up with that to risk coming here.
Yeah.
Would you say at this point, because the cartels are so powerful and in control of the human piece, would you say that it's impossible for somebody, no matter where they're from, to enter the country from the southern border without having to deal with the cartels? Like, is that impossible?
It's not impossible, but it's improbable because they're going to want their cut, and they absolutely control those routes. And so I think they would have to deal with that.
So, in essence, is it a fair statement to say that trying to sneak across would be no different than trying to smuggle drugs through their territory? Like, they're going to view it the same way. Like, motherfucker, this is our spot. You're
exactly right. Yeah, because on the Mexican side, they call it plazas. And those plazas are controlled by a particular boss or gang or cartel. And if you're in their plaza doing any illegal activity, you had better have permission. If you don't, they'll kill you.
Yeah, wow. What cartels are you guys having to deal with?
For us, so like the book, we were primarily the Sinaloans. That they controlled the state at that point, all of Arizona. These days, it's still the Sinaloans. They're kind of fractioned after Chapo got taken out. They fractioned off into a couple different factions, but we have the CJNG, which is the Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generacion, and those guys are the nightmare guys. They are violent. They are well trained, very militaristic in their style and movements and everything they do.
What was the name of them again?
CJNG is the initials, and it's Cartel Jalisco. So Cartel Jalisco New Generation is what it translates to.
Is it just those two pretty much for Arizona?
For our purposes, yeah. And then as you go out, right, because you have the Mexico border that hits different states. So like here in Texas, the Juarez Cartel and Gulf Cartel and remnants of that kind of hit this area. And you guys have some CJNG as well. And then you had some Zetas or what's left of them. And then you go over to Tijuana. You had different cartels in the Tijuana area. And they all have these plazas. And it all originated, if you go backwards in time, it all originated when you look back to like the Kiki Camarena era when he got murdered. There was one big cartel. It was the Guadalajara cartel. And during that time frame, if you watch Narcos, they do a pretty good job. They had pretty good advisors. They do a pretty good job of showing how that fractioned off. And essentially the main boss said, hey, we're going to be this conglomeration of cartels. You'll each have your own territories. We won't fight each other so that we're not stepping on each other. And that became the original model. And then as time went on and bosses changed and infighting happened, it kind of turned into what it is.
Yeah. Do you ever see any evidence of cartels battling for turf or territory in some of those boundary areas? Or so they're constantly...
Yeah, and we're seeing it more and more. You guys see it here a lot in Texas, down in that Del Rio sector and that area down there. And we see the same thing in Arizona now, like the Lukeville area. There are some gun battles going on quite often across the line, just across the line, where you can see and hear and watch gun battles going on.
And are you seeing any of that spilling over across the border into the United States? Not just, I mean, I assume probably not so much on the cartel versus cartel side, but just some of that violence. Are you seeing any of that spill over into the U.S.?
Yeah, there's, I mean, they're always violent, but the willingness to use violence on the U.S. side has definitely increased.
Yeah, they're just getting more brazen.
Yeah.
Any examples?
Not particularly. There's because some of them are still connected to current operations, but there's
All right, so I guess kind of backing up and then looking at it from, as somebody who spent 31 years kind of in the thick of the entire evolution, we'll say, of border issues, you know, growing up there and being in law enforcement for 31 years. Let's say we put you in a position of either border czar, president, make up a position where now you have full autonomy, right, to do whatever it is that you want to do on the border to fix the issues that are currently plaguing this country. Yeah. Again, there's no backstop, there's no kid gloves, handcuffs. You're full autonomy to do whatever you want. How do you personally fix that problem?
First thing would be designate those groups as narco-terrorists and meeting that terrorist definition, so that opens up some doors for us financially to Anybody who deals with them, we're able to lock those finances up, lock those businesses up, because that will stop the money flow. And then that also opens some doors up to get gentlemen like yourself, where we can get the guys that, in case of emergency, break glass, and send those guys to go deal with some of the upper command levels of these and start taking off the head of the snake.
So you would send Americans off into Mexico, and
and believe me, I know there's going to be people that are like, oh, there's so many things, and I get that. I get the whole international piece and relationships with Mexico and all that. But if I was in a position where they said, how are we going to control this? And I had the power to say, yeah, I would absolutely send our SOF guys in there, because you guys know how to solve those problems. And American law enforcement just doesn't have the means to do that, right? We don't have the means to cross international boundaries and go in there after these bad guys. Our military does, and that is a direct threat to the U.S., whether they want to admit it or not. They're narco-terrorists. They're right in our backyard. They control the government of Mexico, which causes, more issues for us. And I forget where they fall, but the cartel industry, their money coming into the country, I want to say it's like 5th or 6th on the Mexican economy.
Yeah.
And then, their control, their stranglehold on the government. So all of that stuff equals designate, cut off the money supply, and then send good guys to go kill bad guys.
Would you approach it at all from a diplomacy or negotiation angle at first? No.
I think we've played that game for years, right? And I just don't think it's going to work.
I say that not saying I disagree with your tactics. I look at it from if I put myself in that position, is I would, just in the interest of, having served with enough guys who have fought in places where when you look back on it, you're like, man, were those dudes' lives worth what we got out of that?
Yeah.
And I will say, like, think whatever the fuck you want. Like, to me, that seems more warranted fighting that because of the impact that's having on our country versus sending dudes to Ukraine or helping Israel out or Iraq or Afghanistan. All those things aside, again, if it's me, I'm going to say, okay, in the interest of at least trying to avoid that. I'm not scared to do it, but trying to, most bang for your buck. If I'm in that position, I think I would call the president of Mexico and I would say, I'm going to give you an opportunity to fix this before I do.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say, here's the deal, is you have this amount of time to cut all of that fucking shit out, right? If there's people and drugs coming off or coming across the way that they are, like all of that shit, I'm gonna say, you stop it,
right.
Or by this day, we're undesignating all this, and the entire brunt of the U.S. military is going to come to your country and fuck you in the ass. Like, to me, I think it makes sense to say that first.
Yeah.
To say, like, look, if you guys want to fucking kill each other and you want to unfuck this mess before we do, I'll give you the shot, because I don't want our guys to go down there, but we fucking will if you don't. Like, nobody talks to them that way.
But I think the problem with that is when you talk diplomacy in the U.S., the U.S. is notorious for going back on its word or threats, right? Or notorious for not standing up and doing what they say they're going to do. And I think the world knows that. And I think we've seen it in Mexico where, when Trump was in, his policies were good. They were working. They weren't 100%, but he was more of a hardball diplomatic kind of guy. And they were working, but the cartels still held control. They still played the game. The Mexican government still played the game. And so, honest, like if it was Matt's world, yeah, I'd call the president and I'd be like, look, dude, we're going to come in your country and this is what we're going to do. And if you get in the way, we're just going to take that bitch, because it'll be easier to defend the border with Guatemala than it will be the entire Mexican border, and we'll just make Mexico the U.S.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it would take a strong arm tactic like that to say, look, like, I'm not fucking around anymore.
Right.
This isn't Biden. This isn't Trump. This isn't anybody you've dealt with before. I'm telling you, like, I'm giving you the we'll say it, the bro talk, the professional courtesy of saying this is going to happen. So if you don't want it to happen, figure out how to fix it, or we're going to.
I think at the same time, like, and I get the diplomacy piece because I understand what you're saying, and no American life is worth some shithead in some other country. But I think, with what you're saying, if I were doing the diplomatic piece, I would probably still have a punch coming. So as I'm having that conversation, I would probably be telling him, as a matter of fact, in 30 minutes, you're going to get a phone call of 3 or 4 of the top heads that we have just killed and taken out. And that's to let you know that we're serious and we're giving you a little bit of help to get ahead of it, because we've just wiped out, 4 of the head dudes for you.
Yeah.
And then, get our guys in. They can do that quick hit, get out, and then let Mexico. But I guarantee you Mexico's not going to fix it, man. It's too corrupt.
Yeah. Outside of kind of that big macro piece, as far as the physical aspect of the actual border itself, Border Patrol resources, local, state, federal law enforcement outside of CBP, what would you do as far as that goes? Like what's your stance on the actual Border Patrol and shutting the border down? Because at this point, it's like, what does that even look like? Yeah, like, how do you even do it without shooting people?
Right,
right. Because I don't know, and I'm not necessarily advocating for that. I'm just saying, like,
well, that's when
you have 10 to 15,000 people a day in one spot, like border wise, you're talking tens of thousands. Like, how do you prevent?
And that's again where policies of past administrations have worked, like the Remain in Mexico policy worked. So when you're talking about that diplomatic piece, and you have, because think about it, all these people right now are seeking asylum. If it's true asylum seekers, the first country they come to that is not the country they're running from, that's where they seek asylum. They don't just keep going and going and going until they get to the country they eventually want to be in. That's what's happening now, is they're going through several countries to get to the U.S. and then saying we're seeking asylum. So if you hold those countries that they've passed through more accountable, when they did that, that was working. You did not see those caravans coming through with those mass numbers. And then as it relates to the border itself, they need to finish the wall, because here's what we have down there. There's some terrain that just by itself, the terrain denies access. So those spots you don't have to mess with. Anywhere else, we need the physical barrier. And then in addition to the physical barrier, they need what helps Border Patrol in the areas that they have physical barrier backed up by surveillance and technology, backed up by the means to quickly transport to and from those areas, like improved roads. That's where they're most successful at apprehensions or decreasing the traffic across. Yuma sector, way back in the day, Yuma sector of Arizona, when they built that wall and put in the technology in the roads, they dropped incursions 95%. So it works.
Yeah.
We just have to do it right.
And as far as the way that things are processed now, I mean, I don't want to assume, but you would say, we're not processing you and letting you go. You're turning the fuck around.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. You ship them back.
To me, that seems like a no-brainer.
Right.
I mean, so which leads to the next question of, from a morale standpoint, like the overall pulse of your guys. I mean, you being the number 2 guy in the entire county, how much kind of shooting the shit with some of the lower guys in the totem pole to see where they're at morale-wise, what they think of how things are going, like, what is that like? And also, what kind of latitude do you guys have as a non-federal law enforcement agency? What is your left and right flank for how you deal with people who are here illegally?
So I think for morale, I'll hit that piece first. For us, it's different, right? Border Patrol's morale is shit right now because they can't fight the fight they need to fight. For us, because of our boundaries, I don't think it has the same effect on us, because illegal immigration is not really our focus or our problem as a local LE, nor do we have really the authority to deal with it. So for us, it's just kind of like, we have this thing, and here you go, feds, how are you going to fix it? So it doesn't necessarily get our guys down in the dumps as far as, woe is me, and nothing's working. They all understand that the current president and the current policies suck, and that what it's doing to our country sucks. But what we're allowed to do is essentially, I'll give you an example. If we stop a load of humans being smuggled, we can hold them. We can call Border Patrol or Homeland Security, and we can say, hey, here's who we are. Here's where we're at. Here's what we have. And they say, okay, we have somebody that we can send you, or we don't have anybody to send you. If they have somebody, we stand by. They come get them, and they process them. If they don't have anybody, we release them, and we just let them go into the country unchecked.
So, and that, from what your experience is in talking with your guys, that doesn't impact their morale?
No, I think they just understand that's the system.
Wow.
That's how it goes, because it's been like that forever. Since I was a baby deputy, that's always how it's been. We don't have the authority. Our state tried to enact a law that gave us local authority or state authority, and quickly the feds stepped in and said, nope, you can't do that.
Yeah. I mean, to me, so I guess taking one step back, if you guys stop somebody, and let's say it's not arrest for some other law that was broken, right, but for whatever reason, let's say it's a misdemeanor, traffic violation, whatever. And do you even ask them if they're a citizen? Is that even something?
Yeah, it'll come up in conversation. Our guys will ask, hey, where are you going? Where are you coming from? Are you here illegally?
So let's say they're driving, right, mm-hmm, and they don't have a license.
Yeah. So then it's just a matter of questioning where they're from, and inevitably you'll get to the point where you can figure out like they're not in the country legally just by the questions.
Deductive reasoning.
Yeah, and the questions that they're answering. And
so if that's the case, like let's say somebody's here illegally and they're driving without a license, are they getting arrested for that?
No, typically not, because something like that, so driving without a license would really be a civil traffic violation. So they could get a ticket, ticket and kick loose. And again, if we determine, hey, they're probably here illegally, and Border Patrol says we're not coming to get them, then they're in.
And so same thing, even if Border Patrol says, yeah, we'll come get them, the end result's the same. They process them and let them go anyway.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and there's actually there's a newly formed business. It's essentially an Uber for illegals. So Border Patrol processes these people down close to the border, gets them in the system, gives them their paperwork, and says, okay, you're free to go. And now we have people who are coming out of the valley area, going down there and just waiting at those centers where they're releasing them, and then saying, hey, X amount of dollars, I'll get you up to Phoenix. And they're making sure that they have all their paperwork, because we've stopped these people. And when we stop them, we're like, hey, you got a carload of illegals. Yes, sir, but they've all been processed by Border Patrol, so they're here essentially legally now because Border Patrol has allowed them in. And so you have now a transport company making money off of getting illegals closer or more interior.
How do you feel about that? Just the overarching processing and letting go.
Dude, it's bad. It's bad all the way around, because they're processing them. They're not necessarily getting all the information on these people. They're letting them into the country. There's so many problems. It's taxing our system. They're saying you promise to appear in 5 to 7 years, because that's how far out the calendar is now, and releasing them into the interior and have no way of tracking them. And I'll give you an example. Last year, it was right around 150,000 unaccompanied minors that came into the U.S. And of that 150K, our government admits that they don't know where 85,000 of them are.
Jesus. All right. Can we play a hypothetical scenario?
Yeah.
Let's say you're back on patrol and you pull me over.
Yep.
Right. And you say license and registration. I say, yeah, I don't have one.
Well, then I just ask you, do you have any form of ID? And
no,
you don't have anything?
Nothing.
Yeah, then I'm probably going to hold on to you, because I got to prove who you are. The driving piece is a privilege, right? And same in every state. It's a privilege to drive. You have to have some form of driver's license, and then you have to, if you violated a traffic law and I encounter you, I then have to be able to identify you. So if you have no means of identification, I then get to hold you until I can determine who you actually are.
So in the case of a van full of people who are here illegally that fall into that same category, yeah. Okay, so yeah, I don't have anything. Sorry, you're going to hang on to me for how long?
Well, that will depend now. So if you throw in the caveat that they say, hey, we're here from another country and we don't have any ID, it changes the rules for us as locals.
So the lesson learned here is, if I'm in Arizona and I get pulled over, license and registration, no
habla.
No, I'm not from here. Like, yeah, I was speeding and you pulled me over, but no, I don't have a license. I'm not from here. Like, all right, well, fucking have a nice day. That's the response.
I can't say that wouldn't happen.
I mean,
but again,
am I fucking crazy? Like, how is that?
No, I know it's black is white and up is down, bro. Believe me, we're just as baffled by this whole system where they've essentially legalized the illegal part. And the citizen, so you as an American citizen, if you don't have your license and registration with you, you face more consequences.
Right. I mean, to me, that's the biggest, dumbest takeaway from this entire interview is the next time I get pulled over, I'm going to say, no, I don't have a license. No, I'm not from here. I'm from fucking Belgium, and I'm here illegally. Oh, okay. Well, fucking have a nice day then. Like, that's what's going to happen. Holy shit.
Could very possibly
Like, talk
happen.
about a fucking life hack. Zach, are you getting this? The fuck am I missing? Holy shit. Man, what a fucking twisted world we live in.
Sorry, bro.
Well, I mean, again, I'm just sitting here baffled. Like, what's the incentive to not do that?
I
mean, because honestly, like, I mean, all joking aside, like, what would you do if I said, no, I'm from Belgium? Like, I speak speak English, but I'm not a U.S. citizen.
Yeah, no,
I'm from Belgium. I was speeding. I'm sorry, but I've got
one of those conundrums where I would have to say, like, because there's always, as a cop, there's always those things you come across where you're like, haven't dealt with this before, so let's figure it out, and probably call a sergeant over and be like, hey, Sarge, so this guy says he's from Belgium, he doesn't have any ID, blah blah blah, and so it is a possible life hack. I can't deny that.
Man, that is crazy. Crazy that in today's day and age in this society that we're that fucked up internally, where we've put ourselves in that position to where that's even a thing.
It's like Bidenomics.
Yeah. God, man. All right. So going back to just kind of as we wrap up here, I guess you've got the book out. Where you're at now career-wise, like kind of wrap it all up in terms of what you're focused on and what's next.
Yeah. So I'm at the end. I'll probably be retiring next year in 2025, most likely. Punching out, that'll put me 32 years in the business. And during the last decade, even couple decades, I've always liked teaching. I've always enjoyed that piece, so I've been doing more of that. I've been doing some speaking. I'm a leadership student, and I've worked at developing leaders with in the organization and some of that stuff. And so that's kind of been my focus is as I approach the end of my career, what can I do in the outside world where what I've learned here translates over? And I think that's kind of my focus is the leadership stuff, developing leaders, speaking to groups that are trying to better themselves. And so that's kind of where I'm breaking into now and getting my foot in that door so that as I progress through the next year or two, I have kind of that platform established and able to step into that realm.
Yeah. And any interest in like starting a consulting company to accommodate that, or?
Yeah, and actually, when I wrote the book, I started my own company, so I'm a small company, and I am gonna take that and branch out of that for the consulting piece and the speaking piece.
All right, so where can we find you, and social media wise, get the book, etc.
The book, you can find me and kind of get if you want to see my bio and my background and stuff is on my website. It is OneTimeNation, all one word.com. That tells you about me. You can get the book there, all that kind of stuff. And then I'm most active on Instagram. I can't do multiple platforms because I just don't have the time. So Instagram's where I usually hang out for social media, and I am my handle there is @deputy_onetime.
Amen. Do you have a favorite dog story before we, other than dragging the dead guy down the bus steps?
Well, yeah. So we had a dog named Cujo that was on on our team, and this was when I was working interdiction, and the canines were assigned to that. I was not a canine, but one of the guys was. And Cujo had replacement canines that were titanium, so he had a real evil-looking smile. And Cujo was notorious for biting people that didn't need bitten when he was off lead.
Sounds familiar.
And so his handler was a big old dude, and had a little bit of a stutter. And so I had a semi stopped on the side of the highway, and I had called for him to bring his dog over to because it was a dual purpose dog. So I wanted him to run the dog because I thought I had a load of dope. And I'm up in the back of the truck, and I'm kind of looking through stuff and, trying to find the dope. And all of a sudden I hear, Matt, don't move. And I was like, what the fuck? So I stop and I turn around, and about 10 yards behind me, Cujo was eyeballing me. He was no collar, no nothing, right? He had his collar, but he was off lead and no muzzle. And I'm like, oh shit, this is going to hurt so bad, because I already knew he was eyeballing me. And that was the one time that I actually observed him return to the handler on the handler's command. So
actually had a good
by the
recall.
grace of God, I did not get bitten by Cujo, but it was close.
Did he have a lot of bites?
Yes.
Operationally too?
Yeah, both.
Yeah.
Operationally and
Accidentally.
accidentally.
That's great. Well, I sure appreciate you taking the time. I mean, to me, it's an honor to have somebody that's as high up in a county that's as big and popular as the one that you're in. It's very humbling for you to take time off to come here.
Oh, it's humbling to be here, brother.
I can't thank you enough for what you do. All you guys, I mean, law enforcement, you guys have such a tough job. I don't envy any of you, but I sure as fuck appreciate all of you.
Well, thank you, man.
Because you guys are the only thing between us, and I don't even want to think about it, you know. So I'm very appreciative for men like you. And everybody that fills a similar role. So I wanted to say thank you for that, as well as some gifts for coming on the show.
Oh, outstanding.
If you could, so it's John Johnson and Champion Choice Silver in California. So you got put your shit kickers on and bust out the buckle.
That is nice, bro. I'm going to rock that for sure.
Awesome. You can't wear that in uniform, can you? Or could you?
With my sheriff, I might be able to get away with it, yeah.
I tell you, having a photo of that would be fucking awesome.
Dude.
If it's possible.
So here's what I'm going to do, because the sheriff does this to me all the time. You can imagine, as a sheriff, he gets all kinds of gifts, right? And so he'll usually send me a picture of his latest, greatest gift, and he'll be like, hey, do you have one of these? Oh, no, you don't, because you're not a sheriff. So
shove that right up
That's
his ass.
right. That's right, buddy. Thank you, Mike.
Awesome.
I appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for coming. Thanks for the book and the coin, which is already up. For you guys, I appreciate you tuning in each show. Without your support, we wouldn't be able to do what you do. Hope you enjoyed the episode. If you didn't, choke yourself. And until next time, this is Mic Drop.